Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Drought-Crops Update Weekly for the week ending 9/24/2022. So let's go to the maps and see what happened this week out in the great USA. So we're going to start with the firm's USA-Canada map where we're tracking fires. We're looking mainly at the western U.S. that has been pretty active most of the summer. One of the big changes we see on this map is all of these small red dots in the southeast. These are all small fires that are less than 100 acres in size, and a lot of those are satellite detected. And so if you click on these, they'll come up with a schedule that will say if it's got a high or a low level of confidence that it's actually a fire. So we've been watching the Moose Fire in Idaho that is now at 130,000 acres. Let's zoom to that again. And just like last week, we're not seeing the spot fires around the perimeter here. And in fact, as we kind of pan around in this area, it looks like most of them are, for the most part, here's a small active, here's some active on the 10-mile. Some of these are still burning. It says 51% contained for the Moose Fire, but there has been rain moving through the area over the past week. So let's look at the MODIS satellite imagery, and you can see from the Moose Fire, the footprint is showing here, but we do not see smoke trailing out of this fire. If we move to the north, the Warm Springs, the post office, the South Fork, this Blodgett Lake, there you can see smoke trails moving off to mainly to the east, a little bit to the north, following the wind patterns. As we zoom out and move to the west, we'll see that there's still some fires over in, where are we? We're in Oregon. Cedar Creek Fire, and you can see the smoke. It is blowing off to the west out into the Pacific, a thin trail. Up in Washington, you can see several fires, and here it looks like the winds are blowing primarily to the north. And so over here to Yellowstone looks pretty clear today. Some thin clouds up at altitude. The lake looks open. Wyoming looks clear, and over here in the Black Hills, and this image was this morning. It was cloudy this morning. The clouds have since moved off, and it's a very clear day here this afternoon. So things are looking good. Hopefully rain coming through the area, as we'll see here at the end of this video when we look at the satellite prediction maps. There's possibility of some more rain coming along Thursday, Friday of this week. Okay, the GOES satellite, this is the image of sometime here just recently, within the last couple of hours. You can see the Terminator moving to the west, so this is probably 4 to 6 hours old. But here where we're at here in the Black Hills, we're nice and clean, and these clouds are moving off to the east. And again, you can see that it's very clear, not a lot of smoke, or from this angle, it's hard to see any perceivable smoke, which is good. Okay, let's move on to the U.S. Drought Monitor. This image we're looking at right here is the week ending the 13th of September. And as we move the slider bar from right to left, we're going to come up to the most current image, which was the 20th of September, so a few days ago. And mainly we're going to see some differences down here in southeast Iowa, maybe in southeast Kansas, and then up into this very southeast part of Wyoming. There's some small changes with the extreme drought in the red. Other than that, not a lot of change this week as we move through. So if we go through Iowa, we'll see that drought has been relieved, and it's changed a little bit into Wyoming with expansion in here. You can see how it's kind of expanded up, but not a lot of change. And so for the most part, things are pretty steady. The extreme and severe drought through the west is continuing. And so we're just going to watch and see how that abates over the next month as we get into the fall precipitation and fall rain. You can see a lot of the severe and extreme drought in Texas has been ameliorated over the past few weeks, which again is good. Okay, looking at the NDVI, again, this is crop index vigorousness of the crop, and this is the week ending 9/18. And the more vigorous the green, the more healthier, the more vigorous the crop growth is. And again, this is a satellite-derived product looking at the red versus the infrared bands. And then the light greens are still vegetative activity, but lower growth. And then the yellows and the tans are getting to where if we were looking at a crop, the crop has probably already been harvested. And so we're seeing a lot of bare ground in kind of this tan color in the Palouse area and into northern Oregon and then in Montana. And that's most likely wheat, which is probably getting pretty close to getting wrapped up. Corn harvest is just starting up in the northern tier of the country. Down south in Alabama and in this area, most of the corn harvest is already completed. And so we don't see a lot of the vigorous growth index. And in fact, in this area in Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, the very high levels of green have abated somewhat over the past week as the corn is maturing and the corn plants are getting more toward a harvest stage. So we should see, and you can kind of see in Iowa even, the ground is kind of getting some yellows in here, same with Minnesota. And again, this is just going to be an indication of the growth stage of these plants ceasing and leading into harvest. Okay, soil moisture conditions. This is ending the week 9/18. And this is looking at soil moisture, cubic inches of water per cubic inches of soil in the upper thin layer of soil. And there's not a lot of change from last week. Again, down in the south, we can see some blues, which are upward of maybe a half of a centimeter, cubic centimeter per cubic centimeter. Mostly through the west, it's down here to 0.05, 0.1 cubic inches or cubic centimeters of water per cubic centimeter of soil. Here in the Black Hills, you can see there's a band of green coming up here, which has increased to about 0.35 cubic centimeters per cubic centimeter of soil. And this is due to the recent rains we have had that has helped the soil moisture condition just north of the Black Hills. Okay, the crop progress in the U.S. this past week. This is corn, week ending September 18. And you can see in this top graph, 2022, we are below the last 4 or 5 years of corn harvest, where on this graph, 2018 was the highest for this time of year, already at between 65 and 70%. And this year we're down to maybe about 50%, so quite behind as far as the harvest. And that's just due to the maturity dates prolonged because of the bad weather in a lot of areas in the country in the spring. So you can see that the maturity of the corn is roughly, right now, the solid line says 40%. And in past years, it was already about 50%, and the harvest is just getting underway in bulk. But again, like I say, down in Alabama, a lot of the farmers down there have already finished their corn harvest and are moving on to soybeans and cotton. Okay, so we'll keep watching this as the corn harvest moves through, and hopefully we'll be able to correlate this with NDVI. Okay, the normal or the satellite imagery that we've been using, the GFS model, on 2 different sites. I've looked at GFS, and I'm only seeing models out for the next 12 hours is all. And so I've come over to Ventisky, and this is their prediction. I'm not sure what models they're looking at or using, but we can step through daily. And I have this set for 12 noon my time. And so this is today, the 24th. And for the most part, you can see the U.S. Is pretty high and dry. This is remnants of a hurricane moving through this Nova Scotia area. I think this was the one that went through Puerto Rico here earlier in the week and is now swooping back onto land up here. And you can see this is rainfall potential over 3 hours. Let me change this to from 9:24, 6 a.m. I guess that's not that much difference. So 1/4 of an inch up there. And as we move through tomorrow at noon, then we can see this storm is starting to build down here north of Columbia. And this is going to be sweeping up through this break up here just to the west of Cuba, and then coming up into the Gulf of Mexico over the next few days. Weather moving through the northern tier, northeastern tier of the U.S. Out here in the west, not much. Okay, the 26th. Here we can see this hurricane strengthening down here. We're looking at several inches of rain potential down there. The 27th, getting more established, moving past the western tip of Cuba. Now we're up over 5, 6. There's 8 inches of precipitation. 28th. It's getting up, getting closer to the Gulf Coast of Florida. Again, the west is pretty high and dry. 29th, which is this Thursday, it looks like landfall, possibly somewhere on the Gulf Coast of Florida. With there was a 10 inch there somewhere. There's 10, 12, 13, 15, 14. So that looks like probably pretty close to the Orlando area is going to be getting some pretty heavy rains toward the end of the week. The west up here in the fires in Idaho, we're looking at half inch to, it looks like possibly there's some places in here close to an inch, 0.9, 0.92 up here. So hopefully that'll help with the wildfires. And next Friday, more extended rain throughout the west, which is good. And this front is moving through now into southern Georgia area. Again, heavy rains continuing in the single digits. And next Saturday, then look, hopefully widespread rain showers all throughout the west. Again, heavy rains over here in the southeast. Okay, so that's kind of what we have to look forward to for this week. It doesn't look like any of these precipitation patterns that we looked at are going to interfere with the cropping, with corn harvest that will be getting underway. And so we'll hope that these farmers can get out and get their crop in and get it harvested in good stead as we move forward over the next couple weeks. So that's what happened this past week, and a little look at weather for the next week. Again, models, so we'll see if it holds true. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy the content. See you next week.